Zoning describes the control by authority of the use of land, and of the buildings thereon. Areas of land are divided by appropriate authorities into zones within which various uses are permitted. Thus, zoning is a technique of land use planning as a tool of urban planning used by local governments in most developed countries. The word is derived from the practice of designating mapped zones which regulate the use, form, design and compatibility of development. Legally, a zoning plan is usually enacted as a bylaw with the respective procedures. In some countries, e.g., Canada, Ontario, or Germany, zoning plans must comply with upper-tier, regional, state, provincial, planning and policy statements. There are great variety of zoning types, some of which focus on regulating building form and the relation of buildings to the street with mixed uses, known as form-based, others with separating land uses, known as use-based or a combination thereof. Similar urban planning methods have dictated the use of various areas for particular purposes in many cities from ancient times. Scope: the primary purpose of zoning is to segregate uses that are thought to be incompatible. In practice, zoning also is used to prevent new development from interfering with existing uses and/or to preserve the character of a community. However, it has not always been an effective method for achieving this goal. 5. Zoning is commonly controlled by local governments such as counties or municipalities, though the nature of the zoning regime may be determined or limited by state or national planning authorities or through enabling legislation. 6. In Australia, land under the control of the Commonwealth, federal, government is not subject to state planning controls. The United States and other federal countries are similar. Zoning and urban planning in France and Germany are regulated by national or federal codes. In the case of Germany, this code includes contents of zoning plans as well as the legal procedure. Zoning may include regulation of the kinds of activities which will be acceptable on particular lots, such as open space, residential, agricultural, commercial or industrial, the densities at which those activities can be performed, from low-density housing such as single-family homes to high-density such as high-rise apartment buildings, the height of buildings, the amount of space structures may occupy, the location of a building on the lot, setbacks, the proportions of the types of space on a lot, such as how much landscaped space, impervious surface, traffic lanes, and whether or not parking is provided. In Germany, zoning includes an impact assessment with very specific green space and compensation regulations and may include regulations for building design. The details of how individual planning systems incorporate zoning into their regulatory regimes varies, though the intention is always similar. For example, in the state of Victoria, Australia, land use zones are combined with a system of planning scheme overlays to account for the multiplicity of factors that impact on desirable urban outcomes in any location. Most zoning systems have a procedure for granting variances, exceptions to the zoning rules, usually because of some perceived hardship caused by the particular nature of the property in question. Functional zoning categories: basically, urban zones fall into one of 5 major categories: residential, mixed residential, commercial, industrial and spatial, e.g. power plants, sports complexes, airports, shopping malls, etc. Each category can have a number of subcategories. For example, within the commercial category there may be separate zones for small retail, large retail, office use, lodging and others, while industrial may be subdivided into heavy manufacturing, light assembly and warehouse uses. In Germany, each category has a designated limit for noise emissions, not part of the building code, but federal emissions code. In the United States or Canada, for example, residential zones can have the following subcategories: Residential occupancies containing sleeping units where the occupants are primarily transient in nature, including boarding houses, hotels, motels. Residential occupancies containing sleeping units or more than 2 dwelling units where the occupants are primarily permanent in nature, including apartment houses, boarding houses, convents, dormitories. Residential occupancies where the occupants are primarily permanent in nature and not classified as Group R1, R2, R4 or I, including buildings that do not contain more than 2 dwelling units, adult care facilities for 5 or fewer persons for less than 24 hours. Residential occupancies where the buildings are arranged for occupancy as residential care, assisted living facilities including more than 5 but not more than 16 occupants. Conditional zoning allows for increased flexibility and permits municipalities to respond to the unique features of a particular land use application. Uses which might be disallowed under current zoning, such as a school or a community center, can be permitted via conditional use zoning.